Hey everyone, this is Bridgette Ray's, and I'm back with another stylish tip for you this week. And this week I want to talk about how to tell someone that they need a makeover. Simple answer to that, you don't. So thanks for tuning in. Have a great week. Let me elaborate a little bit more on that. How do you tell someone that they need a makeover? You don't tell someone that they need a makeover. You never tell someone that they need a makeover. In my 12 years of being a stylist for women, I have never walked up to anyone or told anyone that they need a makeover. It's been something that I've been asked a lot, especially by clients of mine who call me and say, or email me and say, I have a friend of mine and oh my gosh, and she really needs help. Like, how do I tell her? And I always say the same thing. You don't tell her. It's a very, very sensitive topic. It's something that can be very risky. It can affect a friendship. It can really upset someone, and it's really not your place to say anything to them. Some suggestions that I've made to clients of mine have been to speak to your friends, not directly about the idea of having some help, but not speaking directly to them. So to speak more in the first person. So if they're a client of mine, what I usually say is to tell your friend, you're on the phone, you have a conversation like, what did you do this weekend? And they can say something like, it was great. I actually hired a stylist, and they came to my home and she was great, and we went through my closet and we really talked about my style, and we're going to go shopping together, and I learned so much from the experience. It was really, really interesting. And then you stop. You don't say, oh, and do you want our information? You just leave it at that. Now, your friend may say, wow, that's really fascinating. I've been thinking about that for myself. And then you can say, really? Well, I'm happy to share the information with you. She was fantastic. But if your friend doesn't say anything and says, well, that's really nice. You want to go out to dinner tomorrow? Okay, you want to go out to dinner tomorrow. Like, you leave it alone. You don't push. And the other thing is that you don't want to be covert. I'm sure your friend is smart enough to know when you're sort of trying to say something. If you're like, yeah, and I called this stylist, and oh my God, she was so amazing, and you would love her, and oh my gosh, and it was so great. Like, don't make it so that your friend thinks, wait a second, is Mary trying to tell me something? You just want to speak from personal experience. You don't want to, and if your friend doesn't respond, or she just moves on with her life and continues on the conversation, changes the topic, you change the topic with her and you leave it alone. If you haven't hired someone yourself and you want to sort of plant a seed with a friend, again, not in a way where your friend would say, is Mary trying to tell me something? But in a way where you're sharing, you can say something like, lately I've been reading a lot of different fashion blogs. I found this really amazing one. Do you know I found out? Or, did you read that article? Or whatever. Or share something on her wall like, wow, this is really fascinating. But you never want it to be something where you're like, hint, hint. That's a way to perhaps plant a seed without making it direct. It's no different than if you're talking to someone who has like horrible breath, right? And you don't want to say to them like, oh my God, your breath's horrible. Usually the etiquette is, break out some breath mints and have one for yourself and offer them one. You don't want to make this person uncomfortable. You don't want to have them feel called out for something. This is a very vulnerable topic for a lot of women. As far as what to do, though, if you're in a professional environment, so let's say there's someone at work who is dressed inappropriately for their position, and this happens a lot, and is it okay to say something to that person? I've actually been hired by companies who have called me and hired me to help with some of their staff. And I have to tell you, it's my least favorite part of my job. I don't love doing it. It's uncomfortable. And what I can tell you is that there has never been a moment where the employee or staff member who's been called out for their appearance hasn't felt really uncomfortable. And this is why I'm really stressing to you, unless it's really important, like unless your friend is dressed so badly that something needs to be done, or someone at work is dressed so inappropriately that something has to be done, it's best to leave it alone. Because I've experienced the other side of it with these people I've been hired to work with through their companies. And I've had very personal conversations with them. And never once have I noticed that a woman has been okay with the direction that they've gotten. And it's made them very uncomfortable, and it's really affected their morale. It's made them confused. It's made them resentful. It's made them just really embarrassed. I would say that that's the number one feeling they feel. They feel really embarrassed for being called out. And if you are an employer who needs to say something to someone who isn't dressed well at work, there's a few things that you have to be very clear about. Number one is everyone else in the office dressed well, because you can't call one person out if everybody else isn't at a certain level, because it really creates a ton of confusion. The other thing is to have very clear guidelines at your office that really state what is and isn't acceptable. Consider having some kind of seminar or some kind of support for your staff so that they can learn this. Because what often happens is I've gone into large corporations where they don't have the structure set in place. And so this person gets called out for the way they're dressed, and then they're left not knowing what to do, and they're looking around and there's no clear guidelines. So if you're going to call someone out at work, you have to make sure that you have the supportive materials to back up how to support them, as well as if you're hiring someone, that they also have what's clear as far as what you can and can't do at the office, because every office is very, very different. But calling someone out on their appearance is something that never works, especially in personal, in the world with your friends, but even with employers and employees. It's a very, very difficult situation. And you have to be very clear. If you're going to follow through in this and call someone out on the way they're dressed at work, then you really have to be able to back up what your statements are. Don't leave them just dangling with no clear idea of what to do next, even if you're hiring a professional to come in. So that is what I suggest as far as how do you tell someone that they need a makeover. You don't tell someone that they need a makeover unless it is so dire and crucial, unless it's a work situation. But if it's your friend who just doesn't dress well, that's not your place to say anything. Number one, they might not like the way they look. Number two, they may be very well aware of the fact that they don't always look good, that this isn't their strength, and that they're uncomfortable about it already. What you want to do is get your friend talking about it. So like I said, by talking about yourself in the first person and sharing your own experiences, of getting dressed, might help them open up about it, and then you can have a dialogue versus you suddenly becoming their savior, who's going to come in and make it better for them. Don't take them shopping and, suggest, oh, well, did you try this? And it becomes so obvious that you're trying to fix them. You want to first get them feeling comfortable enough to talk about it. But no, you don't tell anyone that they need a makeover unless you want to lose a friend. So anyway, that's my tip for this week. If you have a question, I'd be happy to answer it via video. You can visit my website, bridgetterais.com. Find me on Facebook, facebook.com/Bridgette Reyes Style Expert. Twitter, Pinterest, Instagram, every other social media channel. You could probably find me at Bridgette Reyes. It's been great catching up with you this week, and I'll see you next week.